This is the Comics Alternative Kickstarter, discovering Retrofit Comics 2018. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative Kickstarter. This is the weekly series where I talk with a comics-related creator or creative team about a current Kickstarter campaign that they have going on right now. And this week I have the pleasure of talking with Jared Smith. He is the co-publisher of Retrofit Comics.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, of course. Now, let's maybe at the outset, let me set a bit of a context. This is not the first time that I've spoken with you. We've spoken a number of times. We've met a few times at SPX.
Yep.
And then on top of that, as I have said, and I'm on record because of having said this on the podcast quite a number of times, Retrofit Big Planet is absolutely one of my favorite publishers.
You've liked a few of our books, which we've very appreciated.
Yeah, and in fact, just recently, my co-host for the manga series, Shay, and I discussed Yokoyama's Iceland.
Yep.
Which actually, as we get into the discussion about this current Kickstarter, I want to talk with you more about what you seem to be doing with manga.
Sure.
But yeah, so this was a no-brainer for me when I saw that this Kickstarter started. When was it? When did you launch this? A few days ago?
Yesterday.
Wow, yesterday is we're recording.
Yep, you're cutting edge here.
Wow. I just thought I had to get you on the show to talk about this year's batch of Retrofit Big Planet books. Now, I said Retrofit Big Planet. Let me ask you, because this is listed under Retrofit Comics.
Right.
But explain to me more clearly, especially since Box Brown is stepping away for a while from Retrofit. Is it Retrofit Big Planet? What's the best way to refer to what you do?
Oh, it's kind of a mess at this point. So Box Brown founded Retrofit Comics as his, publishing house to do cool small stuff. And then that was 2011. And in 2013, after he'd done his initial kind of run of what he'd intended when he first started out, which was actually with a Kickstarter, he published 17 small comics. He'd done a few after that and then was kind of deciding what to do next. And I, as co-owner of Big Planet Comics, approached him for publishing advice. And he said, well, why don't you just work with me instead of doing your own thing? And so that was more of a co-effort, I'd say, than like a merge or a thing. So, so I'm like wearing two hats at the same time doing it. So it's kind of Retrofit Comics is the publishing like division, but Big Planet Comics is the co-publishing partner. So we use the Big Planet Comics is the store I co-own in and around Washington, D.C. So it's kind of like Big Planet Comics is the backup and helps, spread the word and stuff. But basically, it's Retrofit Comics as the lead. So Retrofit / Big Planet is the official, like we're co-publishing as two separate groups. But I kind of view Retrofit as the publishing side in a lot of ways. So any of those will work, however you want to call it. Even to me.
And in fact, at times, I have seen you guys listed or your releases listed in a month's previews catalog, sometimes in, I guess, the R section, but I think more times than not in the B section.
Yep, I can explain that too. So when we opened up our Diamond account, they said you can't list it as two companies like that. So we had to pick one. And so I did Big Planet. I think maybe we even had a Big Planet account. I don't know what it was. And then they added it to Big Planet / Retrofit Comics. And another part of our big news is we finally got a distributor who handles the book trade to like normal bookstores and, Barnes and Noble and stuff. And so they have now taken over our Diamond account, which is great. But now they're listing it under Retrofit Comics. So that jumped to a different part of the catalog. So I don't even know. So again, whatever you want to call us.
Yeah. Well, whatever you want to call what you do, your publishing house, great stuff. And as you know, we've done a lot of shows related to Retrofit Big Planet Comics, even publisher spotlights.
Yep.
So I was really excited to see this recent Kickstarter campaign. Let's talk about some of the titles that you're going to be offering for 2018, because that's what this Kickstarter campaign is all about, your 2018 titles.
Right. We're trying to do it so that we do one Kickstarter a year. We might end up doing 2 a year if we split it into like fall and spring seasons. But at this point, it's just easier to do all 12 at once and kind of offer a bigger discount if you get everything. That's kind of our big goal, is that if you get all 12 at once, we're just under 50% off the cover price if you get it that way. So it's a really good deal for everyone to do it. But also, we have 2 books coming out in May at the Toronto Comics and Arts Festival, TCAF. So we had to get this rolling. So which ones do you want to start with?
Well, let's start with the ones that you're going to be coming out with sooner rather than later.
So we're doing 2 at TCAF. We're doing Karl Stevens. He's got a book called The Winner, which, like I said, we have this new distribution deal. It was actually supposed to come out last year, and he got caught up in the shifting schedule of advanced solicitation for the book market. So his book is finally coming out. It's a really funny, I'd say a weird mix of styles, because he's a fine illustrator, basically, but he also does comics. And a lot of the book is about himself and his wife, who's kind of his muse, and kind of how it's hard to work between those two worlds, that you're not taken seriously by the illustration world, and then your art is too fine to be in the comic world accepted well. So there's a lot of like ruminations on that. But then also he'll be like, I'm going to draw a fantasy comic in the middle of this, or I'm going to do a werewolf story. And so it kind of jumps between all these different genres and just shows off his art. It's a really fun book. But yeah, he's he's pretty bitter about it. It's really funny. He's got a good sense of humor. The other one I'm really excited about is The Troublemakers by Baron Yoshimoto, who is a Japanese artist who was really big in the 60s and 70s and kind of getting the graphic novel concept started up in Japan. And as far as we know, has never really been translated into English, even though apparently he worked in America for a while. So this is 6 of his short stories from the 60s and 70s. And they kind of jump the genre from a World War II story, a teen gangster story, a stripper who has a gambling addiction. They're pretty, some of them are pretty dark, but he's just an amazing artist and a really interesting take on the characters. A lot of like kind of blue collar type characters, which I think is pretty unusual for a lot of Japanese stuff.
And that's coming out in May, you say?
Yep, both of those are coming out at TCAF, and that's going to be our biggest book ever. I think 248 pages.
What, the Yoshimoto?
Yep, longest one, that is.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to talk off mic about that one later, because if this is coming out in May, then perhaps Shay and I can discuss that one for our May or even June manga show.
Yep, I was thinking I got another one in the pipeline for your manga show. So there you go.
Yeah. And we do like this kind of material to discuss. I mean, we like the more popular stuff as well, but Troublemakers sounds right up our alley. And you mentioned Karl Stevens, The Winner. Yeah, I'm going to have Karl, as I think I told you in an email, on the show to talk about The Winner very soon. Yeah. And in fact, another one of your creators, Summer Pierre, is going to be on the show in the fall, I guess, right? I guess around the time of SPX.
Yeah, that's technically debuting at SPX, so mid-September. And that's like her memoir about her music, both like kind of discovering music for the first time, like music that really speaks to you. So it's got a lot of like really awesome 90s girl rock bands like, you know, Hole and, I don't know, PJ Harvey and stuff, but also that she gets into the music scene and starts performing music herself in the folk music scene in Boston. And also just, you know, growing up when you're a teenager, early 20s or whatever, getting into music and making mixtapes, which is something I finally remember that hopefully the young kids will be interested in reading about. But it's a really interesting memoir, too.
So, Jared, one question, since we were talking about manga, that I had is you are starting to do more work in publishing manga. And was Iceland your first or second work of manga that Retrofit Big Planet did?
That was our second. We did a short 40 or 50 page stapled comic maybe 2 or 3 years ago at this point by Akino Kondo, who's a Japanese artist who actually lives in New York City now. And it was a translation of several of her short stories put into just, you know, that short little comic book we did. And the reason we did that one and kind of the new Baron Yoshimoto one is that we're friends with Ryan Holmberg, who is one of the kind of preeminent scholars about manga, but also an amazing translator.
Oh, yeah.
And so he just knows everybody in the cool, like, underground, cutting-edge alternative manga scene. So the first one, Akino was friends with him and said, hey, do you know anyone who would publish this book? I'd like to have something out in English to show American publishers. And so we did that with her. The Iceland one with Yuichi was interesting that we got approached by his Spanish publisher who had kind of taken over. He just, they were the first ones to pick up the rights to it. And they just said, we'll try to handle getting these rights out to the rest of the world. And they approached us. And then, of course, we went to Ryan, and Ryan said, well, let me talk to Yuichi and make sure this is a upfront, okay, above board deal. And then, which was confirmed, of course. But then he did a translation from the Japanese original for us rather than translating from the Spanish Japanese version. So a weird mix of that. And then again, Baron Yoshimoto, he's, I think in his 70s or 80s now. But his daughter, Emily, is friends with him and approached Ryan and said, hey, my father is hoping to, again, have an exhibit in New York at some point of his art. Is there a way that we could get some of his old stories translated to English? And he approached us for that. So a lot of it's just like being in the right place, but also knowing the right people.
Yeah, and you also have, Fashion Forecast from Yumi Sakugawa?
Yeah, she's American, but yeah, definitely.
Oh, she is. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, she lives out in California. But yeah, so we've definitely had we did a short Ikebana from her a few years ago, which was her kind of art school combination Japanese flower arrangement comic, which was a really interesting look at performance art and modern Asian American immigrant families, which was really cool. Yeah.
So what are the other ones that are going to be coming out later in the year? Any summer releases, or will most of them be fall releases?
We're doing fall for the rest. So we have 2 coming out in late August, which is our British contingent, Liam Cobb and Becca Tobin, who are both in London. We're going to try and debut those at the Safari Fest in London. And Liam's doing The Prince, which is an update of the Frog Prince myth or fairy tale, but with a modern setting and a kind of bad relationship where this woman, comes across a frog that might or might not be magical. And it's kind of horror update of it, which is pretty interesting. And then Becca's doing Understanding, which is just this like brightly colored, cute little blob creatures, like complete contrast in art styles, but really, really good stuff too. And those should both be out in late August. And then everything else will be September for SPX or November for CAB, hopefully. So kind of hitting the big alternative comic shows.
Well, I am sure that if we don't, let's say later in the year, do yet another publisher spotlight on Retrofit Big Planet, that we'll cover quite a number of these titles on the Comics Alternative, either with interviews or, which I'd like to do more of with your creators, sure. Or on our regular review show, which, as you know, we've done quite a number of times.
Yep.
So let's look now at the various reward levels. So if people go to Kickstarter, look for your latest campaign, they'll find a variety of pledge levels. Let's go over some of those.
Yeah, so this is technically the 5th one that we've done as Retrofit Comics. I wasn't involved in the first 2. Like I said, that's how Box started the company. They did a second one after that for Secret Prison 7, which was their big underground manga-influenced anthology. But so this is our 3rd like big company line one since then. So we did 2016, 2017. Here we are at 2018. So every year it's always a struggle to figure out what's the best way to present your work that will get people's attention, but not be too many options or not be too confused. It's always a mess. So the way I did it this year was very simple. The first one, maybe not very simple. The first option is just pick your book. And so I literally said, here's all 12 things we have coming out. Unfortunately, you have to do the math yourself, but just pick this option and you can get 1 book or you can get all 12 books. Here's the cost of every book, add the cost for shipping, and there you go. Because we've had times last year where people were like, I don't want to get all your books, but I want this one, and the 5th one. So there's a lot of like difficult math on it. But those are all full price. So what we're hoping, and we say right there in the level, is if you get more than 5 or 6 of them, we're discounting everything over 50%. So you'll save a lot of money to just get all 12. Because our big ethos is that, sure, your favorite artist is being published by us, but if you get some other stuff, you'll be exposed to artists you've never seen before. Mm-hmm. And we always try to send out at least 2 books at the same time. And this is not intentional all the time, but usually they're a really interesting contrast in the kind of different styles of comics out there. So even if you really like something, you find something like, this is not my type of book at all, but you get it at the same time. So there you go, another comic to kind of look at. So we're doing a digital level, you just get them all as PDFs because shipping jumped in price, I think, a month ago for standard books. And even to Canada or Mexico, places you can drive a book, is so expensive now that I don't even know how the publishing industry is going to go going forward. And then we have just to get all 12 of them. And we will be adding, as we go forward, several other special deals. Like Carl Stevens that you mentioned, will be offering several drawings and or water paintings or watercolor paintings. So we'll be adding some extra special bonus reward levels as we go forward.
So if people wanted to get the digital versions, then
right,
they could do so for the level of what, $43, right?
Yep. So that's basically a quarter of the cost of the cover price.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And then for the full year subscription, that's going to be $86. And
yep,
then another one that I find interesting is the pledge for $87 for just $1 more than the $86 full year subscription level. If someone lives in the DC area, they can choose to get all of your 2018 releases and avoid shipping by picking them up at one of your shops.
Right. And so that's the thing we kind of put together last year is like, well, we have this area covered pretty well, and we do offer a higher level for stores to order as well. So why not just kind of combine the two if you're in the area and with Big Planet Comics, our local comic book store. And we had a surprising amount of people last year who did go for that option. We carry all the books in our stores, obviously, but this way it's just a way for them to order them in advance and get a, half off discount on them. Mm-hmm. And they'll have some cool books sitting there when they show up.
Another one that I found really interesting is the $140 reward level, which you're calling the digital completist, and that includes 70 digital comics. Now, this would be a way for someone who maybe they haven't had the pleasure, let's say, and what's their problem, of not reading any Retrofit.
They're new to it.
They're new to it. They're newbies, but it's a way for them to jump into the deep end because there is a ton of comics here.
Yeah, so this is almost everything we've ever published. There are, I think, 3 books that we did not have the rights to publish digitally. But other than that, that will be every comic we've ever published in a convenient PDF format. So if you back that one, I think as soon as the Kickstarter is over, you'll get like 60 comics emailed to you or something ridiculous like that. So we first started this option 2 years ago. And back then we didn't have nearly that many. Maybe we had 40 or 50, still a huge amount. And a lot of people were really interested. I think we had a lot of people from Romania get that one, which I thought was really funny. But yeah, so that's like the best way to just catch up for a really small price. But we also have the same option, the print completist, which is everything we still have in print. Unfortunately, a lot of our early books have gone out of print, but you can still get a bunch of those all together. Get a huge box in the mail with, 51 total comics will be coming to you. So that's another good way to do it.
You just said a big box in the mail. I remember several years ago when I first got in touch with you about our interest in doing a Big Planet Retrofit Publisher Spotlight. You sent both me and my co-host at the time, Andy Kunka, the current releases for us to discuss. But you also included, and I didn't even anticipate this, a lot of your back catalog. And I remember getting that big box. It's like, what the hell? I mean, this is gigantic. And so, without looking at any of those issues before I opened the box, I thought, okay, I'm impressed. I'm on board for whatever these guys do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the one advantage we have is that we've been around almost 7 years. I think June will be our 7th anniversary. That, we've done a lot of comics, and I feel like definitely our style has changed a little bit over the years, but a lot of our old stuff is still awesome. And if you haven't seen it, here's a bunch of comics for you.
Yeah. And you also have been very supportive of those of us, I guess, in the media who pay attention to what you do. So I want to thank you for all of your help over the past years. Now, you mentioned that this is the 4th Retrofit campaign that you've been a part of?
Man, I don't know, 3 or 4, a lot.
Okay. So have you found that they have gotten bigger over the years?
A little bit. This one's actually going to be bigger in ambition because this year all 12 of the books are graphic novels with spines, which is part of our distribution deal that they're much more interested in books that you can put on a shelf and send to bookstores to shelf normally. In the last few years, we've done, hardcovers and softcovers, but a lot of stapled normal comics. So in that way, this is probably the most page count we've ever published in a single year.
Wow.
So that's, I think, the biggest growth. Other than that, it's been pretty steady. We always let our artists print whatever they want. So it just kind of depends if they want to do a huge oversized book or lots of pages or bright colors or, whatever things will affect the printing cost and thus the cover price. But on that, yeah, it's just a lot of pages. So pretty exciting.
And this campaign will end on Friday, April 27th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Again, that's Friday, April 27th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So people should definitely go to Kickstarter, do a search for Retrofit Comics 2018. They'll easily and quickly find your current campaign and back it before the end of this month.
Yes, please.
Yes. Well, Jared, it's great talking with you again, and I am excited about these new titles, talking with the creators, reviewing these on future episodes, and I look forward to seeing you at SPX this year.
Oh, yeah, I'll see you then. Well, I think we're debuting 4 to 6 books then. A lot. So
yes.
We'll have some stuff for you.
Oh, and before we go, for those who were in the D.C. area, where can they find your shops?
So Big Planet Comics has 4 stores, and they're kind of spread around the D.C. area. There's one in downtown Washington, D.C. Then we have 2 in Maryland in College Park, right by the University of Maryland, and Bethesda, which is only a few stops down the Metro line from the SPX Comics Show, if you're coming to town for that. And then the 4th one is out in Virginia, in Northern Virginia, in Vienna.
Yeah, so they should definitely check those out. And I think I went to one of your shops. Didn't you have one in Georgetown?
Yep, that Georgetown one is the DC one. It's moved now to U Street, which is a kind of hipper shopping district up in Northwest DC.
Yeah. Oh, I loved going to that one. Several years ago, I had to do various stints conducting research at the Library of Congress.
Oh, cool.
And in the evening, what I would do is take the metro over to where I could visit your Georgetown shop, and I loved it.
Oh, great. Thanks.
So, yeah, if people live in that area, they should definitely check out your brick-and-mortar store, but also the Kickstarter campaign.
Yes, please.
Yes.
We got some good stuff for you.
So, go back at Retrofit Comics, their 2018 releases. I want to thank Jared for coming on the show and talking about this, and I will be back next week with another comics-related Kickstarter campaign. Until then, enjoy your weekend.